Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Welcome to Peter Watches TV, where I cover all the TV shows over here. I cover the reality TV shows, the documentaries, the trending TV shows on Netflix, Apple TV, Max, everywhere. I am deep into it, let me tell you guys. I am having so much fun over here on this channel because you guys know that I love watching TV. And I actually have like 5 videos that I want to film over here for this channel. I watch Control-Alt-Desire about the Grant Amato case over on Paramount. Was it Paramount or Peacock? I think it was Paramount. And before that, I watched the Pillowcase Murders. So I want to cover both of those documentary series over here. I have to do a Survivor finale video still over here. The Valley, Vanderpump Rules reunion finale. And I've been watching a bunch of other shows as well. And so I have many videos that I want to film over here. As you guys know, I am binge watching all kinds of shows this summer. And I'm having so much fun already. I mean, the summer hasn't even really started yet. And I'm just like, I'm living for it. I'm having so much fun. And, you know, it's funny because people say to me all the time about, like, you have so many channels. You have 7 channels, right? And it's like each channel kind of fits a certain love of mine, right? And I love watching TV so much. And it's funny because a couple years ago, I had a really hard time having just the patience to sit and watch a 3-part series, let alone like an 8-part series. And the other night I binge watched, I actually finished it last night, season 44 of Survivor, and I watched the entire season in like 2 days. And now I just love binge watching shows. So for those of you that might be interested, I did a video over here the other day about the Ashley Madison documentary that's on Netflix. And today on my drama channel, on my Peter Mon channel, I did an entire video about Sam and Nia, the Christian vlogging family channel that were covered highly in the documentary. So if you guys watch that video and you enjoyed it, please go over and watch my drama channel. I covered it over there as well. So last night I was talking to my friend on the phone, and my friend Tanya Jean, she and I watch a lot of the same shows, and she goes, have you watched this 7M cult, TikTok cult documentary series on Netflix yet? And I said, no, and I totally forgot, and I had it in my phone because I have all like the upcoming documentaries coming out, like what day they come out, what streaming service they're on, and things like that. And I knew it was coming out the 29th, which was yesterday. So this show came out on Netflix yesterday. When I started watching it last night at, let's say, I don't know, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, it wasn't even on the top 10 of Netflix. I just looked right now, and it is trending at #1 in the United States. And the show, for those of you that don't know, is called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok Cult. Okay, and it says underneath here, Part 1, Die to Yourself. A popular influencer severs ties with her family after joining a church-affiliated management company as accusations of abuse against its leader emerge. So what it's about, if you guys haven't watched this, is I watched all 3, it's a 3-part series. I watched it all last night. It's an easy watch. Interestingly enough, I have watched, I mean, probably every documentary that's out there, documentary series about cults. This is absolutely 100% a cult, and he even laughs about being called a cult, the pastor of this church, and this producer and head of the management company, 7M. And it's interesting because that's kind of like what cult leaders always do. They always kind of laugh and be like, oh, you know. But anyway, when I was watching this last night, I was thinking to myself, you know, I've watched a lot of cult documentaries, and although this one was interesting, I thought it was interesting because they shared a lot of, like, personal stories of the families that were involved. But, you know, I think 6 months ago, I just watched Mother God, or what was that documentary series called? Something about Love of God. I have it actually. I screenshot it last night because I was thinking about Amy Carlson. Do you guys know which one I'm talking about? Amy Carlson and her Love Has Won, the Cult of Mother God. And that one was very interesting to me. One of my favorite documentaries about cults is called, it's about, what's it called? God of the Country, or North Country, or whatever. And it's the guy that builds the commune and the cult in, like, Washington State. I was actually, when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, I would have, like, joined this cult back in the day, you know? So I watched this last night, and it's about, okay, so what 7M is. 7M is a management company that manages TikTok dancers, influencers that are mostly dancers, okay? And it is run by this guy named Robert Shin. And Robert Shin is also the head and the pastor of a church called the Shekinah Church, okay? And there's several different Shekinah churches, but he specifically runs this one Shekinah Church in California. And so it starts with this family. Well, it's really the sister of this influencer, and the girl's name is Miranda Derrick, and she is like a dancing influencer. I think she has like a couple million subscribers or followers on Instagram. She and her sister got like famous together as dancers, and they would do like very much like the D'Amelio sisters, and they would do dances together and things like that, and started getting a lot of opportunities. Her sister moved to California, and then she met this guy, and then they started going to around this other guy who is the son of Robert Shin, that was doing a lot of the video editing and things for the dancers. And so these dancers were like, well, I was having a hard time managing sponsorships. I was having a hard time managing, like, this one girl said something like, I mean, to like have to come up with this content and then also like return an email, it was really, really difficult. So they were like, you know, this guy was doing like all the videography with him and stuff like that. One day they were at his house, and Robert Shin, who's the pastor of the Shekinah Church, who had tried before, they don't share this till later, but he had tried before to get like his daughter to become a singer and his son to become an actor, and like failed attempts to get into the entertainment industry. He was talking to several of these dancers that had millions of followers on Instagram at that point and TikTok. And he was like, well, what if I managed all of you? And like, I manage you together. So he starts managing all these dancers. But one of the parts of the management company is that they have to be members of the Shekinah Church, okay? And then it's also a lot about like tithing. Like they tithe like 10%, and they give a donation of 10%. And then there was like 30% of their proceeds they were giving to the Shekinah Church, okay? As like donations and tithing, like, you know, to tithe to the church is like 10% or whatever. On top of that, Robert Shin, who was over the 7M management company, the 7M management company and the Shekinah Church were basically kind of like, they weren't like really divided at all. They were separate entities on paper, but at the head of all of them was Robert Shin. And so he set up these different houses for them to live in. And so they lived in these houses. They were creators. They were basically like hype houses. It was interesting to me that there was this guy that's probably like 10 years my senior that was running these hype houses, you know, that we've seen with other like famous influencers like the Paul brothers and people like that, and a lot of these TikTok creators that had these like hype houses and things like that, like, you know, where all these people, these creators would live, and they would just create a bunch of stuff together, and then like they'd have people there doing the sponsorships and managing them and doing the videography and the editing and all that kind of stuff. You know, as somebody that is on this side, it's interesting to me to see how like that all works, right? It's like, and then they make a percentage off of that. So Robert Shin over 7M, like I think they made 20%. The management company made 20%. So that's 20% of their income that they're giving to Robert Shin, plus they're giving 30% of their income to the Shekinah Church. So that's 50%. Then they're also paying for the room and board, which was $2,200 a month when it started. So that was like another percentage of that. Plus they had to pay the videographer, they had to pay all these people. They were literally giving up like 70% of their money to Robert Shin, who was over the Shekinah Church, and he was also over the 7M management company. The whole documentary starts with this family of this influencer named Miranda Derrick. And she moves to California. Her sister is like, they used to do a lot of these dancing videos together, and she becomes very concerned about her sister. Her sister starts dating this guy. He's also in the 7M management company. And so they become very concerned, and they try to go out there and contact her. She puts a lot of distance between them, and they don't really know what's going on. Like, she won't respond to them or anything like that. And they've tried to reach out to her, tried to reach out to her friends. Nobody will respond to them. She basically doesn't want anything to do with them. So they have no alternative other than they take it to social media. And that on her birthday, and this is the end of the first episode, on her birthday, they do a live stream, and they basically say, this is what's happening, is that their daughter is like in this 7M cult management company that they call a cult, and that she is like, won't talk to them. Well, it comes out that he has this idea, Robert Shin, this belief system that you have to die for your family. And basically what that means is that, or is that the exact term that he uses in here? Hold on, I have it written down. the term is, hold on a second, where is that at? Die from your family. And what that basically means is that you cut off all your friends and family, okay? Well, this is very much a tactic of cults. That they don't want you to have any interaction with your past friends and family. They want you all to themselves, so that you will believe and do everything that they say and never question it. The way that he gets around that is, like, they start off very slowly with having these dinners where they read from the Bible. They encourage people to come to their church services. Later, you can only come to the church service if you're invited. Her sister goes in and explains all this kind of stuff. And so a lot of it, it kind of like develops slowly over time. But it's really to isolate those people away from their friends and family. It's interesting because at one point the family's talking to basically somebody that knows a lot about trafficking and things like that, and there's not a lot they can do because these are adults, right? And the one thing she says is that you always want to keep the lines of communication open. Well, any cult would know that you need to close those lines of communication off, because if you have a family member or a friend that's saying, I'm concerned about you, I'm worried about you, that might get into your ear and you might start thinking about that, right? So the family gets online. Well, then Miranda's response to this is she gets online and basically attacks her family. Now Robert Shen is in this position where the entire world, because you have these huge influencers that have millions of followers, right? With the family coming out and saying, like, I don't really, you know, I don't know what's going on. We miss our daughter. And they're saying it in a very nice way. Like, they're very loving about how they say it. And she's like, I'm fine. I'm okay. So she starts doing these lives basically retaliating. And it's this back and forth thing, right? Well, then it comes out that the Shekinah Church actually existed long before he was 7M management, which, I mean, they know. They talked about that at the beginning. But there were a lot of people that he had hurt and, like, allegedly assaulted before that. And it comes out that there were these two sisters, Melanie and Priscilla, and they were both part of the Shekinah Church. And Melanie and Priscilla had, like, an absent mother that was absent due to, like, work, and they also insinuate that she was an alcoholic. And so the younger sister, Melanie, starts going to the Shekinah Church. Well, then her sister Priscilla starts coming to the Shekinah Church. And then over time, they have them living in these different houses, and they separate them. And both sisters at some point are allegedly sexually assaulted. And the reason why I'm saying allegedly is because there's currently court cases going on. They actually use a lot of influencers, like YouTubers and things like that, and Instagram accounts in this documentary. And so, like, I'm trying to stay out of all that. So that's why I'm saying allegedly, because the ongoing case right now is the civil case is going to happen in 2025, and there are actually at this point no criminal charges that Robert Shen is not charged with any criminal charges at this point, which is interesting because, you know, on my drama channel, I cover a lot about allegations of grooming and predatory behavior, and people always say things like, if there was any truth to these allegations, these people would be sitting in jail. And experts on this have come out and said that it's extremely, extremely difficult to press charges in situations like this, especially when a lot of it occurs online, because it's really one person's word against another, right? And they show this, they demonstrate this in this documentary, because this woman, I mean, all the dancers finally, except for like 3 of them, leave the 7M management company. And so when they leave, they start talking. This one girl shares her experience about how she's been, you know, like, had SA experience with this Robert Shen. This Priscilla, the sister, comes, she goes to the police on several different occasions. Several different people do, and the police don't press any charges. And the kind of sentiment at the end of the documentary is how many women need to come forward and press charges and share their stories for the police to take it seriously, right? And we live in a very flawed system where somebody can come forward and they can have documentation, they can show proof, other people can document that, they can share that, and they can say things like that, and it's still not taken seriously, right? And so, you know, it's interesting in this world that we live in. On my drama channel, I just have covered, you know, 2 influencers, James Charles and Colleen Ballinger, that were, you know, involved in predatory allegations, and that's always the go-to of their defenders and their fans, is if it was really that serious, those people would be sitting in prison, when this documentary actually proves the contrary. How hard it is really to press criminal charges, you know? And that's actually a really ignorant stance when people say that. So I thought that was interesting that they covered this in the documentary. So let me get back to this a little bit. So it goes in and talks about Robert Shen and the Shekinah Church, and talks about this being a cult, and they're cutting their friends and their family off, and they're dying for them. And this dying for them is this very interesting concept that he comes up with, that, like, if you want you and your family to go to heaven, like, you have to do everything that you possibly can to get closer to them. Well, to get closer to them means to get closer to him, okay? So their goal is to get as close to God, but they have to go through him, because he is the man of God. And to get to God, God, to get as close, to be as godly as possible, you have to get as close to him as possible. And to many of these women, that means giving them massages while they're naked, giving him all their money, doing whatever he says, things like that. You can never rebel against him. You can never say anything against him. So it is very much like you do everything he says, or you're not godly, and you and your family are going to hell. And that is very much the sentiment that they live under, and a lot of these people are believing it, right? Because they're surrounded by their friends that are doing the same thing, and they're all agreeing with it, so they go along with it. For Priscilla and Melanie, that were the original members of the Shekinah church, it's a little bit different, because they really didn't have anywhere to go, and they were scared. You know, they just had, their family was the Shekinah church, and so they're willing to do whatever, because they really don't have anywhere else to go. Melanie at one point has one friend, this Marcus guy that, or Mark, I think his name is Mark or Marcus, that is like, rescues her from this place, and she even tries to get her sister to come out at that point, and her sister stays for like another 15, I think, or 20 years, or something like that. It's very sad. And so, you know, it's interesting because he goes in there and he talks about this Robert Shen. They play a lot of his like sermons in the background. He talks in there about whatever you think is either a thought of God or of the devil. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is interesting because this is a very like principal idea to evangelical Christianity. This idea that no matter what you think, it's either a bad thought or a good thought. If it's a good thought, it's a godly thought. If it's a bad thought, then it's a devil thought, right? And it's a very like evangelical Pentecostal kind of idea, right? That all of our thoughts are ruled by something else. And it's also a way of him kind of like convincing them that they have to constantly be checking themselves. Like, if you're thinking a good thought, then you're more godly. If you're doing something for us, you're more godly. If you're doing something that's negative, or you're thinking about leaving, or you're thinking about your family, then you're not really thinking about God, and you're not thinking about us. You're thinking about yourself, and that's selfish, and that's a devil thought, right? And so that's really how he does a lot of like mind manipulation and controlling them. To get right with Robert, you have to get right. To get right with God, you have to get right with Robert. And the closer that you get to the man of God is the closer that you get to God, right? And so that's where he develops that whole kind of story in there, and dying from your family. And then he talks a lot in there about blessings. And blessings are like, we should give blessings to God. But his definition of blessings to the church and blessings to God are always blessings in a financial form. At the very end, they talk about this. Priscilla files a lawsuit against, and several other people do. He sues them first, but she files a lawsuit. This is the lawsuit that's coming out in 2025. She files a lawsuit against Robert Shen and the Shekinah church. And what you have to do is, you can't sue somebody for basically having a cult, because those are grown adults and they're deciding if they want to be there or not. But what you can sue them for, it's crimes that they are committing in the cult. And so he's taking 70 to 80% of these people's finances. And what she shows this one couple is that even though it looks like they're giving, they're tithing to the church, they're paying rent over here, they're doing this over here, they're paying this videographer, they're doing this, they're giving blessings to the church, it's all going to the same person. Like, all the checks are written to Robert Shen and the Shekinah church. It's all going to the same 7M management company. It's very, very sad, right? And so interspersed with this whole documentary of Robert Shen and his building the 7 management company, I mean, these people are getting paid like $40,000 to $300,000 per like paid sponsorship, commercials, all these things, dances that they're doing. And he's basically saying, this is the songs you're going to, he picks the songs. Like, he's very smart. He comes up with this idea that they're going to start dancing to all this old music, like the top 10 from every year. And it really works to them. And so then they really believe that he can bring us success. He can make us very, very famous, because he is. And so they're like, in their heads, these dancers are like, oh my God, like, he's saying that our belief in God is bringing us success. Well, that's true, but really part of what it is that he's also got 10 very successful dancers with very successful careers already. Most of them had 500,000 to 1 million followers already on TikTok and Instagram. And so he's taking these very successful dancers. Then he comes up with the idea is that we're going to take the top 10 songs from the last 20 years, and you guys are going to do these dances to them. Well, everybody knows those songs, you know? It's why Glee used the Journey song as one of their main songs in the show Glee, because everybody knows the song, Don't Stop Believing. It was very, very smart, but also not like a genius level, you know, intellect. I mean, it was an easy thought. He was a good marketer is what he was. So then when they're getting paid more, and he's got these dancers that he's now managing, they're all working together and they're cross-pollinating their audiences, he takes that as an excuse to say, God is blessing us. So then they go under this, they believe under the guise of God, that God is the one that's doing this to them, when really what it is it's their success together that's making them successful. And it's really their age, and them being younger, and them not really knowing the world of all of this entertainment world, and that they're just taking his word for it as face value, that is really the first step of abuse that he's doing. He's totally taking advantage of these kids, and he is bankrolling in their money. Then using God as the excuse to keep them there and shut off their families, because he knows if I shut them away from their families, they don't talk to their families, they stay devoted to me, and I'm the man of God, and they're going to get closer to God. God is the one that's giving them the blessings. The closer they stay to me, and they don't talk to their family and friends, they're going to do everything that I want to do, and for the next 10 to 20 years, I'm going to continue to bankroll off of this. So it's all financial, right? It's all completely financial. So then her parents, Miranda's parents, the Wilkins, are like a huge part of this, and they work with another family, this Nick's parents, to try to start like investigating what they can do to get their kids out of there. At some point, they kind of realize, so then Robert Shin realizes he's getting a lot of media attention about this. The Hollywood Reporter, the Daily Beast, all these people are like, I think the New York Times is writing up articles about Robert Shin and the Shekinah Church. So he's like, I got to change my tactics. So what he does is he says, you need to start having relationships with their families. But all these people say, if we're going to have relationships with our families, then you can't bring up the Robert or the Shekinah Church. So they all kind of, just to have relationships with their families or with their kids, they like have these very false, just glossed over relationships that aren't really, like, they're very superficial. Like, the sister's kind of over it at the end, which is interesting because I looked on this Miranda's Instagram, and like, she just went to her sister's wedding a couple days ago, which her sister is like, I don't even know if I want her in the wedding. She takes no pictures with the family and posts them. She takes no pictures with her sister. She wears a black dress to her sister's wedding and just like poses in front of it. And it's interesting because it kind of is like her proving to the world how much she's cut off her family. The comments underneath her Instagram account, I mean, they are not pretty, you guys. Hold on a second. Here, I'll show you. As I had it pulled up, I was like looking at this last night. It's Miranda Derrick. She has 1.5 million followers on Instagram, and it says, her Instagram account says, God is good, and then it has her TikTok and inquiries underneath there and her links. And so it's this picture, I know you guys can't see it, but it's her in this black dress at her sister's wedding. And she says, had such a great time at my sister's wedding. There's 1,435 comments. Somebody said, obviously a staged photo after the documentary. Somebody said, you really broke your sister's heart. Somebody else says, wearing black to a wedding. Somebody else said, how disappointing, no longer somebody I would ever want to look up to. Somebody said, you are making Robert your God, not the real God. Somebody said, that man does not worship God, he is worshiping a false light God. Somebody says, where's the bride? I mean, other people are in here, share a picture of you and your sister, you don't even talk about your sister. I mean, everybody is coming for this girl, is not favoring on her side, which in all honesty, I feel like she's a victim of this too, and it kind of makes me sad, but she is the one that's making the choice to like cut off her family and things like that, right? So it's interesting because it goes on here, and the Wilkins parents and the other people are trying to work to like get their kids out of the situation. That's when a lot of the dancers start to leave, right? Because if you didn't do what he wanted you to do, and he didn't work hard enough, then you get called out. They start kind of seeing the scam of it. They start realizing what he's doing, right? And so they start losing. When all the they start leaving. When all the media stuff comes out about him and what's going on with him and like how he's controlling these people, they start losing jobs. They start losing sponsorships, and it starts affecting them financially. So that's when a lot of people start leaving. Like I said on here, I noticed that a lot of people were cruel to Miranda in her comments, and I do believe that Miranda is a grown adult, and she is making the decision to leave her family and her friends and not talk to them anymore, and her parents, and I feel devastated for them. At the same time, having watched so many documentaries of cults, she is herself a victim of this cult. I mean, to get out of it, she would have to have like a lot of like therapy, to like the anti brainwashing therapy and things like that, to even change her mind. You can tell she really believes this stuff in there. It's very, very sad. He even tries at one point, and he laughs at it. So her husband is black, and she tries to, like, the pastor tries to paint this picture that her family is racist, and that's why she doesn't get along with her family, when they've shown like videos and pictures and clips of like, how they all loved one another and all this kind of stuff, and she tries to kind of capture it on video at some point, and her mom's like, I'm not going along with this. Her mom's like, I'm not playing into this of what you're going to do. It's very, very sad, the lengths that this Robert Shin will go to. I mean, he even talks about like playing the racist card, and if they're going to play dirty, we're going to play dirty too. And you're talking about a man of God, supposedly, right? That's running this church. But really what it's about is that he only cares about the money. And then it comes out that he allegedly essayed several different women while promising the position of the wife his wife, which would be the woman of God, even though he had already picked a woman of God, okay? So he allegedly uses this ideology of God and being godly to assault these women, and goes on and talks about that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they show in there about him saying stuff like nakedness is normal and all this kind of stuff. It's all like normalizing grooming those behaviors, right? There's a lot of grooming that goes in here, and they don't even use that word, which is interesting to me. But when you're watching it, it's the language that he uses and what he did. It's the fact that I don't think they used the word grooming once in the entire documentary, and I was very surprised by that. So then this Priscilla and her sister Melanie file a lawsuit because they can't get him for that, but they can get him for the crimes that he committed during the cult, like stealing these people's money, right? At one point, there's this whole situation where they like do this covert operation to like serve him and his family and the members of this church like papers because of the civil lawsuit, and they're like on these walkie-talkies and stuff. I was like living for this moment, and they go into this like restaurant, and they like these friends of Priscilla and Melanie, they like throw these packets down. They're like, Robert Shin, you've been served, and they're like, but anyway, it's a kind of gotcha moment. It's like it's a good moment for them. But after this, Priscilla's driving home, and she said that she feels bad because for years she protected them. And I thought, this is something we don't talk about, a lot of this stuff, right? Is that it's so human to feel empathy for your abuser, because that's how real human beings feel, right? But then at the same time, that's also what goes along with the grooming. And when you've been groomed for years and years and years, you have this attachment with the person that groomed you or the organization that groomed you. And so you do have compassion for that, because that's natural. There's a relationship that was groomed and built over years. And so her response to this shows how she still has that, this part of her. It's like, she even says at one point that she misses the church and things like that, right? Then this one dancer, and I love that he said this, he says, I went in for spiritual guidance, but I left with the church being tainted for me now. And, I thought about this. I was like, some religions abuse their power and drive people away from God, right? When that's what they're trying to do, is pull people in with God. But a lot of these different religious organizations and churches and cults, they drive people away from God because their goal was never spiritually centered to begin with. Robert Shin's goal has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It has everything to do with money and power. And that is the least godly thing in the entire world, When you talk about, like, spiritual songs like His Eye is on the Sparrow and things like that, the power of a mustard seed, you're not talking about somebody in a powerful position that's trying to be like God, right? It's not like the more powerful you are, the closer to God you are. And it's this misunderstanding that he warps these people's mind and takes advantage of them. And it's very, very sad to me, And it's all for show. This Miranda girl, everything that she does of being around her family is all for show, and all this kind of stuff. And they don't say anything because they're afraid that if they say anything to her, then they're going to be cut out of her life forever, and they want any kind of a relationship. And, I have to say, I kind of understand that from a family's point of view. It's like, do I accept a relationship on this level, or just cut my daughter and my sister out of my life forever if she's going to do this? Well, you hope at some point, like they show this dad at the very end, and he's like, he was so nice. The parents were so nice. His sister was so nice. And they're showing him, and he's like watching old videotapes, and he's like, I hope that she'll come back. She'll come back, won't she? I hope so. And it's like he struggles with this every day, and it's so sad. And she doesn't even realize what she's doing to her own family, because she's convinced that she's doing this for her family to some degree, right? But then I'm thinking to myself, none of the dancers say this afterwards, but what drove them to this belief? Was it the money and the power that they were receiving? Because their numbers quadrupled. If they started with 500,000, they left with like 2 to 3 million subscribers and followers. They were making, so much money. They were getting so many sponsorships. So was it really about God to them or family? Or was it all about collab sponsorships and money? Was that why they were so willing to go along and believe it? I mean, many of them that left, and I felt bad for the ones that left. They were in this abusive system as well. But they don't really say that, like why they stayed around for so long, I don't know. And it's like all of them were young when it happened. And so he's totally abusing this like naivete and this innocence that these younger people had. Even they're in their young 20s when most of them, like when this all happened. It just made me sad. The whole documentary is very, very sad. It's going to be interesting to see what happens coming forward in 2025 with the civil case. If you guys want me to follow that, I will follow it over on my Peter Mon channel, where I'm going to be doing true crime. So anyway, let me know what you thought about the documentary in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.